people go from situation to situation, whether it's getting into a new relationship or a new job or a vacation or whatever, and striving for the award, the accolades, and all of that. And those are all great, but they're also temporary. And they're temporary because no matter how much you try to fill in the missing link, it still doesn't connect you to your inner self.
Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all, from psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there. Welcome everyone to the Reluctant Medium podcast. I am beyond delighted to share with you another guest who I'm like, wow, we speak the same language. I can't wait to speak in depth about her next work. I have for you today Shirin Etessam, and she is an entrepreneur, seasoned media executive, and transformational speaker. She's produced films. She's like, I don't know, built airplanes. I don't know. What haven't you done? You've done everything. But the most important thing, which you just mentioned briefly a bit ago, is that you are a normal, everyday human being who had some wake-up calls and you decided to write about it. And that's actually where I'd like to start, is what prompted you to write such a profound book? Her book, Free to Be, is going to be published June 20th. The tagline, A 6-Week Guide to Reclaiming Your Soul. Can we have angels sing now? Ah, that is such a great title. So what started this? What happened? What went down in your life as a normal human being?
I actually thought I was winning at life. So at the end of 2013, I went through a major breakup with my partner of 13 years. And we were dear friends for 9 years prior to that. So 22 years of my life basically vanished within 20-minute conversation. And I pretty much from this first night, I realized really quickly that it wasn't a matter of a broken heart. I mean, it certainly was that, the loss of the relationship as well as loss of the family I had been developing and cultivating and nurturing, and the kids were 5 and 7 at the time. And I realized really quickly that it wasn't just my heart that was broken. Everything felt broken. And it scared me and confused me. It scared me because I didn't understand what was going on. And also I was so worried that I was somehow going to unravel and it was going to affect my kids even more than separation was. And it confused me because I had all the worldly goods that, we strive for, right? I had the positions, I had the titles, I had the companies, I had the homes, I had the cars, I had all of it. And I felt empty, just completely empty. And so that was confusing for me. And I just knew this could not be how the story ends. This could not be my final chapter. And people would say that. They're like, oh, well, on to a new chapter. And I'm like, I don't want a new chapter. I want an entirely new book. This is not working. So I dove in really deep, and I mean really deep, for 6 years. And I went through what I call now bobbing for spiritual apples, because I had no idea what I was doing. And so I kind of, really futzed my way through the 6 years. not really knowing what I needed, what I was striving for. It's funny because in the early days, my motto, my hashtag used to be better than this. And the thought was that if the next minute, next hour, next day, next week was a tiny bit better than it was the moment, hour, day, and week before, then it was an improvement. And so baby steps, which led to bigger steps and some really major aha moments. And after those 6 years, I really felt like I had not only righted my own ship and was, had set sail and all of that, which I was really feeling. I realized that if I knew what I was doing at the time that I was bobbing for spiritual apples, that really the process, if you like really distill it down, could be done in 6 weeks. And so I basically wrote the book that I wish I had when I was at that juncture.
6 weeks to reclaim your soul. Tall order.
But it's actually, once you read it, it actually is not. You can move through it really quickly. And I've had quite a few people do it now and it works. So
I have
yeah.
no doubt. I have no doubt. What do you mean by reclaiming your soul? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, good question. So you could call it your soul, you could call it your true essence, you could call it your inner star. It isn't your inner child. I want to point that out because your inner child truly is your heart. And the inner child is your inner child for a reason. It's young, it's innocent, it wants to be held. Your soul is wise and evergreen and powerful and consistent, which the heart isn't. So that's what I mean when I talk about our soul. And the issue is that, you hear people say, follow your bliss or follow your heart, which is total misnomer, should be follow your soul. But most people don't know how to get to it. So the first part of the book is really dedicated to decluttering you, detoxing you in order for you. It's kind of like an inner excavation in order to be able to reconnect with your soul. And then once you've done that, to like, what do you do with it then? So the second part of the book is all about what you do. And I could go through it really quickly if you want, either now or later.
Oh yeah, we're definitely getting to that. Thank you for being willing. I can't wait. I have a couple more questions before that because I think that before we reclaim, which PS is so empowering. Thank you for using that word. It's so empowering for the reader.
I want to insert a little something, which
Yeah.
I think you would find humorous, and hopefully some of the people in the audience will do too. When I was writing the book, I didn't have a title for it, right? So the working title that I had was How to Live an Empty and Meaningless Life. Because empty and meaningless in the Buddhist term, empty
Yes.
as in like emptying one's mind, and meaningless as in not assigning meaning to everything.
I love it.
And then I got an agent. She's like, yeah, that's not gonna fly. I was like, okay, second book.
Dang it. I love it. That actually reminds me of a cartoon I saw once. It's like a little comic. It was two monks speaking to each other, and one said to the other, "You're the most thoughtless person I know."
Like, thank you. Oh yeah, there's so many of those. Like there's a meme where, like a Buddhist, it's like a box and it's like, oh, nothing. Thank you.
Oh my God, that's like dad jokes for the Buddhists.
Yep.
I love it. Fantastic. Yes, book number 2. I'll read that one as well. So I'm curious though, to go back to before we reclaim our souls, how do people lose them in the first place?
Yeah. So there are quite a few studies now, and thank God, about what they now call disassociation. So somewhere between age 0 and 5, age 0 and 7, we disassociate from our true sense. You look at babies, you look at toddlers. The reason why I emphasize the fact that they're adorable, there's something about their energy that we all gravitate toward. There's an innocence there, and an aliveness and a joy and all of that. That is your true essence. That is your inner core. That is your soul. And somewhere between 0 and 5, 0 to 7, we disassociate. And it could be because, and we all do it to different degrees, depending on when it happens, why it happened, and your reaction to it. So it could be that you were in the crib and your parents didn't come to pick you up soon enough, and you decide that it's not safe to be as you were. So you shift things. It could be that your first day of kindergarten or preschool, and it's a way to protect yourself. I mean, I could, not so much with my daughter, but I could, like, with my son, like, I could tell that, like, almost the day that it happened and what came out of that, and trying to mitigate somewhat, but it happens to all of us. So at that point, what we end up doing is disassociating from our inner core and taking our cues from the outside. And then we start acquiring, and you learn that there are certain things you can't do. And if you want to advance in your education, you've got to get the grades, and there's rules and regulations. And then we start adulting and more responsibilities. So there are layers after layers of schmut, life schmut, that is piled up. And then, you know, you have someone who's like, hey, hashtag follow your bliss. And you're like, huh? I have no idea what that is. So most people don't even know what it is. And then everyone's addicted to happiness, which I can also talk about, because, and that's also problematic. And so people go from situation to situation, whether it's getting into a new relationship or a new job or a vacation or whatever, and striving for the award, the accolades, and all of that. And those are all great, but they're also temporary. And they're temporary because no matter how much you try to fill in the missing link, it still doesn't connect you to your inner self. So it's truly a matter of switching the scenario so that instead of living from the outside in, you live from the inside out. Long answer to your question.
No, I think those details were really useful, and to describe how it is as a child, as a young child until around age 7. It's interesting because I talk about how brainwave activity works in kids, and it's around 7 when brainwave activity starts to move up to the beta level. It starts moving, and we're thinking, doing all the things all the time, achieving, getting the grades, as you said, and instead of listening to within, it's okay, what's everybody else telling me that I should be doing? And it's all different things. So now what?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
That makes me think of like social media and how that came about. And is that part of the detox?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about detoxing at first.
Yeah. Did you ever see The Social Dilemma, by the way?
Excellent.
Yeah. So I talk
Absolutely
about
amazing.
that it's not just social media, but social media certainly has accelerated everything. And those who haven't seen Social Dilemma, please do. And what I found most interesting about that documentary, and I thought it was brilliant and so timely, was that they talked about the people who created the platforms, whether it was the Facebooks or the TikToks and the WhatsApp and such. did not realize the Frankenstein that they were building. So they built something which connected people, and what ended up happening is that, much like everything else, especially in the West, it gets fueled by advertising, which has corporate money behind it, and then algorithms set in. And so they basically feed you the information they believe that you want to hear. So it's no wonder that our country is so divided, because it's an echo chamber on each side. And it's not really anyone's fault in many ways. It's not like, that's not what they didn't intend it for, mind control. It's just that it's on auto right now, and AI is amplifying that even more so. So yes, I talk about social media a lot, but not only social media, because information at this point, there's a big section that I have in chapter 1, week 1, about intoxication, which is content overload, and all of us are experiencing it. And the only way that one truly can control, measure, filter the amount of information that is coming to us is by us doing so. The same way that we wouldn't go from, fast food place to another fast food place to another fast food place just because we can, because we know that it's not good for us. It's the same thing. We have to self-regulate. No one's going to do it, and we can't point the fingers, frankly, you can point the finger. Shielding ourselves and really picking and choosing what it is that we allow in. So, yes.
More self-empowerment. We get to choose. I love that. You make things so practical. Let's just, if you're willing to, move into that. So this is 6 weeks, and we've talked about the first week. Is the first week the detoxing?
Yeah, well, the first 3 weeks are detoxing. And thank you for saying about, I call it practical spirituality, because spirituality, and I actually dislike that term, because, like, mental health isn't called mentality. Why do we call it spirituality? So it's really mental health, mental wellness that we're talking about. And if you are to practice it like practicing anything else, you want more muscles, you go to the gym and you work it out on a day in, day out, regular basis. You want to shift your thinking around something, you see a therapist regularly. If you want to feel better, a better diet, sleeping regularly. But then when it comes to spiritual wellness, it's sort of like spaghetti to the wall. Did it stick? And I don't know why it's like that. So it is very practical, and you don't have to go to an ashram. You don't have to go to a retreat. All of those things are great. And believe me, I love those things, but that is not spirituality. That is not, I should say, those things are not solely spiritual practice. So spiritual health has to be on a day in, day out, integrated unfolding. And so very much practical. And when I say day in, day out, doesn't mean that you dedicate your 6 weeks to doing this. It's very doable throughout your day, however way you live. So week 1 is all about detoxing the brain, because that's the biggest culprit to anything. It's just like our monkey minds just chat, and you got to tell it to shut up. Seriously, I tell whenever it starts raging, I'm like, shut up, sit in the back of the bus. Sometimes I hug it and I'm like, okay, you are chatting a lot. You're still not driving the bus. And then the second week is all about detoxing our heart. And that's really about, one, allowing yourself to feel all the feels. I call it the RGB because my background's in film and TV. So I call it the RGB of your life. You have to have all of the feelings, like all the colors, in order to live your life in Technicolor. You can't just give, have one and not the other. But it's also about protecting your heart and not assigning things to it that it shouldn't be. Like, the whole follow your heart. Your heart is, I call it your puppy, your inner child. All the heart wants is to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be cared for, and to be loved. That's truly it. And it's super fickle. I want to take a nap now. I want to eat some ice cream. Then I want to go for whatever it is. It just needs to be, you just need to be kind to it. And then also talking about how one spends their time and who is in their lives. Not everybody is your people. And I have this way of filtration, which I call taser, shield, filter, or hug. And where you put people in different categories depending on your relationship with them, which I could talk about later if you like. But so it's really truly about caring for your heart. And week 3 is about detoxing your body, but beyond the sleeping well, eating well, exercising regularly, it's shifting our bodies, our relationship with our bodies as our only vessel through this life. Because we either neglect our bodies and just expect it to do its thing, or we're abusive to it, not just by what we put into it or what we put through it, but how we, it's like, oh, you're too fat, it's too flabby, it's not, whatever. So really shifting that, because your body deserves it. And also being able and listening to it, so if it's ill, taking care of it, and so forth. So once we've done that, we've basically have cleared the slate, cleared our runway in order to find our soul. And I would say that our soul that has been laying dormant, our inner core, our inner essence, once those, our heart, body, and mind are at ease and decluttered, it almost becomes a byproduct. The soul, the connection with the soul becomes a byproduct of that because you feel it so strongly. And then the second half of the book is dedicated to like, okay, you've found your soul. Now you've connected with it. What do you do with it? Week 4 is my favorite week because it's all about play. I'm a huge advocate of adult play, and I could talk about that. And again, it's kind of a step-by-step. It isn't like, hey, go out and play. There's actually play personality types that I'm sure everybody will connect with. And I'm a combination of 3. And again, I could talk about that more. And playing like your life depends on it, because it does. And then week 5 is about, a lot of people get soul and spirit mixed up in that kind of wavy gravy woo-woo-ness. Soul searching is really difficult. It's difficult, it's dark, it's challenging. All your demons are like right there. The spirit is whatever you want to call it, higher consciousness, universal energy, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, whatever it is. It can't really be Buddha because Buddha's God within. But whatever all there is, whatever it is that you believe in, it's connecting with that. So our soul is our very, very unique imprint in this universe. No other soul like yours anywhere. And spirit is what connects all of us. So week 5 is all about the dance between the soul and the spirit. And you've got meditation and such in there. There's actually exercises for every week. And then week 6 is about rewriting one story. I call it manifesto like you mean it. The O is in parentheses, so it's manifest like you mean it. But once you rewrite your story, it kind of becomes your personal manifesto. And that's also practical too. Like I actually have a Venn diagram for how to go about it. Not like, hey, good luck, write your story and bye. So again, it's step by step, very much how to, very practical.
Oh, that's the best. This is my Taurus self. I like practical step one, step two, step three.
Yep.
So it's completely awesome for me. I would love to talk more about play.
Yeah.
I am with you that adults just don't play enough. They just don't.
Yeah.
There's too
Yeah.
much
And
adulting going on.
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, it's not surprising that, the further we become disassociated from our true selves, like disassociation is, so there's that catalyst, that disconnecting moment, but then it takes time, right? And kids, so 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds are still playing. But then, as you said, responsibility sets in. You start adulting more and more, and that sense of play goes away, and often our joie de vivre goes away as well. And we become more responsible and such. And certainly by the time we are in our early 20s, if not our teens, we are adulting, and our way of playing is really escaping, right? I mean, it's often involves like going to bars, and usually what happens when we go to bars, and especially I know, me and my girlfriends, we sit there and you're talking about either relationships or work, which isn't really play. It might be a bit of a reprieve. It may lighten the load a bit, but that is not play. Play is literally doing cartwheels in your backyard. It's like getting on swings. It's sliding down something. It's, role playing where, you're the captain or you're a pirate or whatever it is. So, and coming back to the play personality types, Dr. Stuart Brown, who I had the privilege of spending an afternoon with, he is known as the godfather of play. He has a TED Talk and a few books, and he gets quoted a lot. He identified 8 play personality types. And and I'll give you some examples. We are typically a combination of a few play personality types. So what might feel like play to you may not feel that way to me. So it's really important to kind of identify what that is. So, for example, there is the creator. I love creating, whether it's writing scripts or now the book or creating TV series or films and such. So that is a way for me, and I've been lucky enough to make a living out of it. But I can be creative, and I can be creative in many, many ways that doesn't feel like work to me. And that's important. So the intention of play, when you're playing, the musicians call it being in the flow. It's when you feel present and alive, and it's almost this feeling of in loveness and freedom. And so creativity for me is a go-to, but there's the joker. I love kidding around and joking around and making people feel good, but I don't like pranking people. So again, there's a little bit of that. There's also the explorer. I'm an avid traveler, so that is playing for me. And it doesn't mean that you have to suddenly fly off to Bhutan. It could be that you're exploring your backyard or you're exploring part of your house, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be elsewhere, but you're in that kind of exploration. So I combine those things often. And then there's other ones like the collector, who, they like collecting things. I'm a minimalist, so the idea of collecting just sounds stressful to me. And then there's the director, which sounds even more stressful. Like I can direct and produce and all of that for a living, but the last thing I want to do is coordinate and manage for fun. But I guess some people get a kick out of that. So there's the director. Point being that it's good to figure out your personality type the same way that if you're going to the gym and working with a personal trainer, they customize your workout for you. So it's important to customize your play according to what feels right for you, and then go really play.
That makes so much sense because there are times when I have a son who's a total pranker. That's his thing. He's like, he loves to prank
He's
people.
a joker. Yeah.
He is. I am not at all. But I'm breaking out a scavenger hunt list and we're going hiking and we're going to explore. The way that you described being in flow, athletes describe that too, like just being in flow. It's like there's no time. 5 hours.
There's actually the competitor. That's another one. And I'm not the competitor. And the competitors get joy from, and that one's tricky because you can't keep score. Like if you're concentrating on the outcome, that's not play. Play is intentionally unintentional.
Yeah.
So watching sports can also be considered play. So,
Yes. And that's my husband.
there you go.
So what happens when you have folks who are different in different like play personalities? What do you do?
Oh, you mean couples who are
Or like a family. My son's a prankster or a joker. My husband's competitor. What would that be? I
well,
like
I
to
think
collect.
then you get really creative about what that is. Like my son is definitely a competitor. He's also a joker. My daughter, I would say, is creative and an explorer. Neither one of them are collectors, and they're definitely not directors. Maybe they think they are, but they're not. I mean, maybe that'll come out later on. So we do, I mean, when they were younger, of course it was easier. We would play all sorts of, I mean, we got stuck in a huge hurricane in Belize. And they were much younger. And my God, when we were in the eye of the hurricane during that time, and we were like sheltering in place in a bathroom because it was the only place that had four walls. I started telling like all the Tintin stories. I grew up with Tintin, which wasn't very popular here, but it was in Iran and in Europe. All the Tintin stories came to my head and I started telling them, and I'm sure that I embellished and created my own scenarios. But so there is that storytelling, but we also would act it out, So the next day we were like on an adventure and we do it. And even till today, a few months ago, we ended up getting into trouble because we were walking and we decided to have this like little competition about who could hop the fence the best. And we were going back and forth and doing all that. And was just like, oh yeah, no, you go again. And then suddenly there was like this F-150 truck that came rushing toward us. And we're like, oh my God, what have we done? And it turned out that there was a water treatment plant. And we were jumping. I'm like, sorry, sir. Kind of thing, I mean, it's just this super innocent and very impromptu.
Yeah, and you probably could have done that for a long time and been like, "Oh, whoa, it's been an hour. I can't believe that. How did that happen?"
Yeah, though my back wasn't too happy with me,
Oh,
but
your back's like, "It's been an hour."
Yep.
So I'm curious about this. So once you have all of these steps in place, right? Like some folks think, okay, I'm going to do this 6 weeks of stuff, this beautiful plan. And then life's going to be amazing and nothing bad will ever happen again. How does that
Yeah, that is what we call spiritual bypassing. Yeah.
do tell?
So super important to talk about. This life is super challenging and no one gets out alive. Not a one person. Doesn't matter what kind of awards and accolades and positions, and none of that will matter. For some people, life is definitely harder than others, but it is challenging for everyone. And that does not stop. It does not stop, and it can actually get worse. So there is no glossing over. There are wars, there are people getting tortured, there are rapes, there are murders. I would like to think that the more people concentrate on themselves rather than others, that, and we truly transform ourselves, that the world will be better for it. And hopefully there'll be some tipping point and the world will transform as well. But right now, and for as long as we've known within history, that hasn't been the case. So that doesn't go away. Hopefully, once you are more self-realized, you'll do more good in the world, which I'm hoping to do with this book and conversations and such. But it's, life doesn't suddenly become glossy and beautiful and all of that. And you do have those moments, and I think that you appreciate them so much more. You actually even appreciate the not so good ones because you're walking through gratitude. But truthfully, it's about becoming an everyday warrior. It's about having your inner world be bigger and more powerful than anything else that comes along. I have this image of the new Wonder Woman have you seen it? There's this one shot where she's walking through the battlefield, and of course she's gorgeous and all of that, but there's like all these explosions and stuff happening, and she's just walking through it as gracefully as possible. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Truthfully, it's being able to tap into your inner power anytime there is a conflict, and moving through that conflict and through your life and through the world from that space. And it is very possible, and it is absolutely transformative. Like, once I realize my inner power, I can't imagine anything taking that away.
Yeah. And you're the living evidence of it right now too, because you're out and about traveling, promoting, you're in a waiting room right now. Like, all right, I'm just going to set up and do the thing. Like, that's just what happens. Not that you don't feel the stress, but you have these tools now, and you've likely rewired your brain and created new memories for your body to respond in different ways than maybe it would have.
I believe so. I tell people that the only time I feel like I am off my path is when I am off my path. That is the only time I know it now, where it's like, there's kind of like my guardrails, like, oh, okay, I'm not. And then I literally will drop everything. If it's not immediate, then within the next hour or 3 hours, and I will take time to center myself, reset, and then I'm up and at it again.
And what a great example for your family too, right? It sounds like this is I don't know, maybe another future book for you, like stuff that kids can learn. Like, put this in schools. Like little.
Yeah, I mean, I for a while I was geeking out about the education system in Northern Europe, especially in Finland, because I think that they are doing a lot of things right. They have shorter school hours, and they also teach emotional intelligence as a part of the curriculum. And I'm like, God, why? Why are we not doing that? Like you said, we're doing our kids a total disservice. I don't know if you ever saw the TED Talk with Ken Robinson.
Sir Ken Robinson. Amazing.
And that's what he talks about, the education system being, and it doing a disservice. And again, I won't rabbit hole down that, but it is so, like, I don't care, frankly, if I may say, if my kids know about what happened in Mesopotamian times. You know what I mean? I care about, are they going to be okay and feel accepted and feel like they belong when they are with their peer groups? Will they be kind to the first love of their lives? Will they truly find joy through whatever they choose to do through life. Like those things, not, what happened in Egypt in some AD,
Right. Or even whether they get like straight A's, it's fabulous. It's great. And was that being their authentic self? If you're your authentic self and you really like I'm totally a nerd. I like getting straight A's. I just love that. It feels good to me. But no one has ever, not once, asked me what my GPA was. Like,
Well, and
nobody
the thing,
cares. I don't care.
nobody cares. And the issue, we want our children to be these like vibrant souls in the world and go and do amazing things and change all this stuff. But then we often give them cookie cutter educations. Somehow we have studied exactly the same thing as everybody else does, but somehow your inner star is just going to shine through. It's like, well, why not cultivate that inner star from the get-go?
I love that phrase.
Soapbox.
I know. I love this soapbox though. And now I must use that phrase, inner star. How beautiful is that? That's just gorgeous.
Because truthfully, all we are is, at the risk of sounding a little woo-woo, we're like supernovas. Yes. We're brought into this life and we're like, until we, spread out and go into whatever other lives or whatever ends up happening. But my God, let that supernova happen.
That's right. And P.S., you can't be too woo for this podcast. It's all spiritual stuff. Shirin, thank you so much for being here today, for carving some time out this stressful promotional period for you. I can't wait to pick up your book. And I really hope that others listening and watching shout it from the rooftops. It sounds amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me on your show.
I'm hoping you got a useful nugget or two from today's podcast episode. May you be well, and I'll see you next time.